So, hello and welcome to what is our first BeaconLit online pop-up session. BeaconLit's been running since 2013, and so this year should have been our 8th festival, but the pandemic has sort of scuppered that a bit. So what we're doing instead is a series of online pop-up sessions, of which this is the first one. And it's our very popular New Voices panel, where I get to talk to all of the or some of the authors that you're going to be hearing an awful lot from in the future. So probably you saw them first here in some cases, which is great. A couple of things I quickly want to mention before we get going on the discussion. First of all, if you see this and want to tweet about it, here's the hashtag BeaconLit Online. And the other thing I just wanted to mention very quickly is that we exist as a festival to promote books and writing, but we also try and support our local library, the Beacon Villages community. Can't even remember the other word, but Beacon Villages Community Library. I always have trouble with what it stands for, BVCL, and we exist to raise funds for them because they exist only on fundraising. They're a voluntary organisation, and yeah, so these events are free for you to view and enjoy. But if you did want to sort of chip in and help the library out a bit, it's a bad year for them because they're not having the normal BeaconLit. You can pop over to the website and donate here. So it's beaconlit.co.uk, and if you go to BeaconLit Online 2020, you'll find a handy little donation button. That's enough of the advert, so let me get started. So what we have with us today, we have first of all, we have Sophie Ward, who is we have Sophie Ward, who is an actor and writer, and her novel Love and Other Thought Experiments was published in February 2020 by Corsair, and the paperback will be released on the 6th of August 2020. Sophie's short stories have been published in a number of anthologies, and her book, A Marriage Proposal, The Importance of Equal Marriage and What It Means for All of Us, was published as a Guardian short book in 2014. In 2018, Sophie won the Royal Academy Pin Drop Award for her short story Sunbed. She has a degree in philosophy and literature and has a PhD from Goldsmiths, which I think she's quite recently achieved, on the use of narrative and philosophy of mind. Ruth Hogan has described Love and Other Thought Experiments as a towering literary achievement, and Sophie Kinsella has described it as a book that dances and dazzles with ideas.
Hi.
Eve Smith writes some speculative fiction, mainly about the things that scare her, and scared me as well. In a world of questionable facts and news, she believes storytelling is more important than ever to engage people in real life issues. Set in an all too believable near future, very believable near future, in the aftermath of an antibiotic crisis, her debut thriller The Waiting Rooms was shortlisted for the Bridport Prize First Novel Award, and her flash fiction has been shortlisted for the Bath Flash Fiction Award and highly commended for the Brighton Prize. She recently contributed, as did I, to an anthology of crime shorts called Noir from the Bar to raise money for the NHS, and she lives in Oxfordshire. Louise Beach said of her novel, if the themes are dark and topical, the writing is exquisite, a superb and satisfying novel. And Susie Aspley said, stunning dystopian debut, a prescient and alarming tale that seems to whisper from reality. And we'll say a bit more about that later. Ruby Speechley, who completes our panel, graduated from Sheffield Hallam University in 2009 with an MA in creative writing. She's a Faber Academy alumna and prolific writer whose work has been longlisted for the Lucy Cavendish College Fiction Prize, the Exeter Novel Prize, the Caledonian Novel Award, the Bath Novel Award and has won the Retreat West First Chapter competition. Her debut novel is the psychological thriller Someone Else's Baby. And she's a mum of 3. Ruby lives in Bedfordshire and was born in Lisbon, Portugal at the time of the first earthquake there in 200 years. Hope there's not going to be one here today. Kate Hamer said Ruby Speechley weaves a page-turning tale about a compelling subject. Be prepared to sit up into the night to finish it. And Ros Watkins described it as a gripping debut on a fascinating subject, compulsive, emotional and thought-provoking. So that's your panel. I'm Dave Sivers. I'm going to try and keep these 3 under some sort of control today. And I write Chiltern noir crime fiction set in Buckinghamshire and Hertfordshire. So to kick off, nice easy one for you. I'm going to ask each of you to tell us in just a couple of sentences, a couple of minutes about your book. So let's start with you, Eve. Tell us a bit about yours.
Hi. Well, my book is set in the aftermath of an antibiotic crisis, which has come about because of decades of spiraling resistance. And unfortunately, drastic measures have been taken. No one over 70 is allowed new drugs. And when they get ill, they are sent to hospitals for the elderly, which are dubbed the waiting rooms, which are hospitals where no one gets well. And set against this rather grim backdrop is the story of Kate, a nurse at one of the waiting rooms, who decides to search for her birth mother, but finds out that someone else is searching for her too. And that's the waiting rooms.
Eve, I know your book was accepted for publication long before the world became a real dystopian nightmare.
Yeah.
What's it been like having a book come out in the midst of all this with themes that are perhaps a little bit close to home?
Well, yeah, I have to be honest, it has been very unnerving, and quite a few early readers have been asking me if, you know, I'm some kind of soothsayer, if I've got my crystal ball, which I most definitely have not. So at times it's been quite uncomfortable because many of the scenes in the book have very strong parallels with what we have now all experienced for real during the pandemic, which frankly is not anything I would have wished to happen. So it's been difficult, but what I would say is from the people that have read it, who have felt comfortable reading it, even though it's very close, it's increased the resonance of the book, to be honest, because now we all know what a global medical emergency looks like, and you know, disease has no national borders. So we either get on with it and sort it out together, or we suffer the consequences.
And was that sort of something that you were thinking about, Eve? I mean, the whole sort of disease having no borders thing, was that a thing that was as uppermost in your mind as it is now when you were writing it?
Yes, it was, because the book actually is set before the crisis, so 27 years building up to the crisis, and then 20 years after. And the point I really wanted to make is that if you ignore the very clear warning signs, and all of the facts pre-crisis are based on real facts, by the way. So the pandemic in my book is tuberculosis. So if you ignore those warning signs, and there's a tuberculosis epidemic in South Africa, you ignore them at your peril, because at some point that disease is going to hit here. And as I understand it, it's already making a recurrence. I hate to say that, even in the West as I speak. So yeah, it was a very key point.
And what made you want to write that particular book?
A lot of people ask me that, like, why did you honestly want to write about something that grim? Because I like facts and issues. I like writing about issues. And when I read the first facts I found were actually that the government, the UK government, commissioned a report with the Wellcome Trust. And they published this report, which was, you know, covered quite widely in the British media at the time. And it said that every year, this is in 2015, 700,000 people die from antibiotic-resistant infections. Wow. And the prediction is that if we don't sort that out, oh, I'm so sorry, that will increase to 10 million by 2050. I'm just going to sort that out. I'm so sorry.
Let's move on anyway to Ruby. Would you like to tell us a bit about your book in a couple of minutes?
Yeah, it's I've got a copy of it here. Someone
Ah,
else's baby. So it's about a young surrogate called Charlotte, who meets an older couple on an online forum, and she offers to be their surrogate. They've been trying to have a baby for many years, and she ends up having twins for them. But Charlotte finds it really difficult to hand the babies over and wants to keep in touch. But when she tries to get in touch with the new parents, they seem to have disappeared. And she begins to discover that they're not who they said they were. And so she has a race on to try and get her babies back.
so what made you want to write that particular story?
I saw a real life program with a young surrogate, and they sort of showed the before, you know, when the young surrogate wants to, you know, have this baby for this couple who, you know, have everything in life except a baby. And she was all very enthusiastic. And then the after, she seemed to keep looking at this baby that she'd handed over. And to me, she looked like she was really wanting the baby back and wondered, you know, probably why she'd done this. And I thought, she's looking at them. Does she really know these people? And it just set me thinking, you know, this is such a difficult thing to do. I wouldn't be able to hand over a child. And you know, does she keep in touch with them? Do they want to keep in touch with her? You know, are they who they say they are? I mean, I actually tried to Google this couple online, and I think they'd completely wiped out everything. And that kind of made me think, oh
Really?
my God, who the hell are these people, you know, that have just gone off with this baby? So yeah, it just set me thinking. I've always been interested in surrogacy because it terrifies me. I just wouldn't be able to do it. You know, I remember Kim Cotton sort of in the 80s was the first surrogate, and I just thought, wow, you know, that a woman could do that is sort of amazing, really. The very selfless thing to do. But yeah, I sort of, usually it's the surrogate that, you know, might change her mind. But I thought, what if the people that you hand this baby to actually turn out to be completely not the right people at all?
It's very striking that you know, the characters who are wanting to sort of take the children on when they're finally born, are very subtly, you know, you get the feeling there's something not quite right, but you're not quite
Yeah.
you can't quite put your finger on what it is. But the thing that really struck me is that your characters are very ordinary people, and their strengths and failings are very realistic and authentic. They find themselves in a horrific situation. And I wonder, with the subject matter, how hard you might have found that to cope with at times.
Well, I wrote the first draft, and then I did research thinking, is this too far-fetched? But actually, the more research I did, the more it just backed up what I'd come up with, and it was quite terrifying, really. In America and other countries where surrogacy is treated differently, you know, some countries it's illegal, you know, other countries there's a price on every head. So the rules are just different everywhere, and it, you know, all sorts of terrible things happen to babies and children. So it just sort of confirmed really what I wanted to put across. You know, what terrified me at the beginning was that there are all these forums now. Surrogacy used to be quite a closed thing, but now because you can go online and you can meet new people, as you can go online and find a sperm donor, a surrogate, someone to co-parent with, just, you know, basically a stranger that you just decide to do these things with, and there's no regulation. I thought there was regulation. There's very little regulation. So, you know, that from that point of view, that's terrifying to me.
So it's one step on from sort of meeting somebody online and deciding to have
Yeah,
coffee with them.
yeah, yeah.
Several
So
steps on, in fact.
you can have like a, you know, a single lady who has no intention of getting married, can just go online and say, you know, I need a man to have a baby with, and we will co-parent, we'll kind of meet. But you know, what happens to the child in the future if those parents don't keep in touch, don't get on? It's just a minefield, really.
Ah. Let's move on. Let's move on to Sophie. Sophie, tell us first of all about your book.
Yeah, this is the paperback, which comes out next month. It came out of this idea that I had about these little thought experiments that they use in philosophy to describe and explain and investigate various theories about consciousness. And I took 10 of those tiny stories, which are really things that some of us already might know about, like philosophical zombies and the idea of whether or not a computer could be conscious. And
Didn't I
then
spot Schrodinger's cat in there somewhere?
I didn't put the cat in as a story, but I think there's a reference to it. But yeah, I mean, exactly those kind of thought experiments. But in this case, particularly ones about what it is to be a human and whether we'll be able to replicate the brain and make something that is not organic, conscious. What is consciousness, and what is the essential thing that makes us, some people call it a soul or a mind. So I was really interested in that area, and I took those 10 tiny stories, some of them are only a couple of sentences, and then investigated them in a novel form from this family's point of view. So you start in the 1960s in Cyprus, and there's a baby born, and you follow that through over about 100 years, well, to 2040s on Mars, the moon, one of the moons of Mars. And you see at the center of it is more the time that we're living in now, where these two women decide to have a baby together, and they testing each other and testing the waters. A little bit like Ruby was saying, it's slightly uncharted territory, and they're trying to find a new way of doing things. And they have a baby, and then one of the mums dies, and the little boy grows up with this idea that somewhere his mum is alive, and then he thinks maybe it's in space, so he ends up going into space to look for her.
Wow. And what made you want to tackle something like that? I mean, it's quite an ambitious and complex piece of work. And what made you decide to do that?
Well, I've always been interested in this idea of the mind and what it is, and oftentimes it's what has happened now is it's been taken over a lot by physical materialists who describe the mind purely in physical terms, and the old idea of a dualist identity, where we might have a soul or we might have some separate phenomena that makes us individuals, has been completely dismissed. And in some ways, it's only in literature that you get to really find out what's going on in anybody else's head. When you read stories, novels, comic books, you get to find out how other people think and what's going through their mind, what their lived experience is. And it's a much better way, I think, of explaining our consciousness than it's made up of this chemical and this chemical and this strand of matter, and this physical state causes you to think that. I mean, that's all a way of describing what it's like to be a human being. But to me, in the end, it doesn't matter if you say, well, this is all just the mind is just a product of our imagination to help us exist as human beings and be better animals. Maybe that's the case, but it doesn't matter, because what we essentially feel is that we do have a consciousness. And that's the important thing in the end, because that's how we relate to each other and how we connect. So those are the themes I wanted to explore. And then I have this family at the heart of it.
Indeed. And I found, because it is thought experiments, and one particular, without giving up away too much of it, but one particular part of it, I found that it started messing with my head. And I wasn't entirely sure which bits of it were real in the book and which bits of it weren't. Was that your intention, or is it just the way my mind works?
Well, I think that's a common experience. Obviously, it messed with my head, but while the ant itself, one of the themes in the book is that one of the women feels that an ant has gone into her eye and is living in her brain, and it's a sort of test of her relationship with her partner, about whether her partner can believe in this and has some faith in her. And I thought that that's something about relationships. It's about how much you throw your lot in with your partner and decide, yes, we're gonna see the world together, and we're gonna be allies together, and how much people can give up in order to do that. And so that when this ant goes into the eye, I had this idea that we might all end up feeling a bit, if you were reading the book, once you've got this idea, it's very hard to get rid of. And that's part of the sort of reality or dream-like state of some of the book, is that once, and I think it happens with every book, there are certain ideas that happen in a book that you can't really get them out of your head. It's so powerful, isn't it, to have that relationship with a book. And we never forget certain moments where we read some sentences in books our whole life. So I did want to have that effect slightly.
I think you certainly have. I want to come back to Eve and talk about some research, because it's obvious for the waiting rooms you must have done a great deal of research. And,
oh yes.
Yeah, and I wonder, sort of what sort of techniques you've gone through, what sort of help you'd had, if any.
Yeah, well, I love the research. Some people don't like it, but I'm a bit of a nerd. So for me, if I'm not careful, I can literally go right down the rabbit hole and sort of get lost and come up again a bit later. So I have to discipline myself. But it kind of started with that article, which I was talking about, and huge apologies for the phone, by the way. That was my husband. He's going to get it in the neck later. Yes.
They said we should mute ourselves.
I know. I'm so sorry.
Fair enough.
So with the research with the book, it started off with that article, and from there, there's a huge amount out there online. And I also go to quite a lot of events. Non-fiction events, and I'm lucky enough to live near Oxford, and there's a huge amount of science events and alumni events. So I went and listened to real scientists speak, and actually I went to an Oxford alumni event in October where I heard 2 epidemiologists talking about pandemics, SARS, and how the next one was definitely around the corner, and we got really lucky because there was no cure and no vaccine. And I kid you not, that was in October. So I think part of it is getting out there, because they gave me a lot of the proper lingo, which I then put in the book. You can do a lot on your laptop as well. But yeah, I really enjoyed the research, and I thought it was very important because it's a serious subject. And I wanted to do justice, certainly to the facts, which I use pre-crisis. I should do that as well, because I didn't earlier, and my publisher will kill me if I don't.
I'm going to talk about that side of the books towards the end. But did you sort of get in touch with experts who you were constantly on the phone to, or emailing, or did you very much take away what you got from the alumni events and take it from there?
Yeah, well, to be honest, it's difficult when you're new, like a debut like me, because nobody knows of me, right? And these guys are really high powered. So I didn't really feel that I could contact them. If I went to events, then you can absolutely talk to people. But Twitter, frankly, is really good for stalking experts because they're out there. You can find them. And then I followed them, and then I linked to their conference presentations. And actually, because I do quite a bit of blogging about the issue as well as my novel, because I do really care quite passionately about raising awareness about antibiotic resistance. So I do quite a lot of blogging about it now, and I've actually got some experts following me, which I treat that as the absolute bar of success. If serious scientists are actually bothering to follow me, so yeah, it's been a real mix of things.
And when they come to you and start asking you questions, you'll know you've really arrived.
Yeah, well, I'll know I've arrived if I can actually answer the questions that they ask.
Ruby, one of the things that interested me in somebody else's baby. I mean, you've got this nice ordinary couple, and it's really the surrogate mother who particularly wants to actually do this thing and do this altruistic thing for another couple. But you sort of get the sense, or I get the sense, that the husband's going along with it largely because he can see there's some money in it. And
Yeah, I think
but again, it's quite subtly done. But I mean, is that his motivation? He does change throughout the story, but he seems to be thinking, yeah, well, you know, we'll get a good sum of money out of this.
Yeah, I think he kind of wants the money to help his business partner, but yeah, it's definitely about the money for him at the beginning, because this couple are offering a lot more than the usual expenses, and you know, in the UK you're only allowed to pay expenses. I think if it's beyond sort of £15,000, you know, that's seen as sort of too much, but I don't think he would actually be taken to court. Talking about research, I did sort of talk to surrogacy lawyers, but you know, the legislation is was put together in the 80s. It's just not been updated at all. But yeah, he obviously changes because he realizes that, you know, these children are at risk, basically, without giving too much away. And it's not about the money at all. You know, they're real two little people. So he does change his mind. But I do wonder, it does make me wonder if people do perhaps go into it for the money. I mean, I did read some horror stories of you know, women who put themselves forward to be surrogates and then pretend that they're pregnant when they're not, you know, and taking the money and running off. I mean, they're very rare, these sort of awful cases, but you know, there are terrible things that happen.
And I guess even if you're not being sort of totally sort of, you know, avaricious, as it were, you know, the sort of the financial side of it may still be an attraction, especially if you could sort of do with the dosh. And
I think that's why in this country, you know, it is just reasonable expenses. You know, you're not allowed to pay thousands and thousands of pounds, which, you know, does happen like in America and places like that. So I think, you know, that is one good thing. But yeah.
Sophie, I mentioned Schrodinger's cat, and you said it only gets a sort of a nod. But the sequence I was thinking of, and again, I don't want to spoil too much of the plot, but it's the one where the lad swims out to sea to recover the ball. And that's very much a sort of a sliding doors sort of chapter, where you know, just as you think you know where this is going, it sort of rewinds a little bit, and that was part of what was sort of slightly messing around with my view of where that was going and where he was going and where the story was going. I started to doubt reality, but I mean, it's the sort of the sliding doors thing where almost, you know, one step that somebody takes can affect the whole future, and there are lots of parallel futures going on. Is that something that you're interested in?
Yeah, I mean, there's the universal theory that's based on string theory, and that would mean that at all different moments, all different universes are being created based on different decisions and directions and accidents that happen. This was more based on the thought experiment, The Prisoner's Dilemma, which is the basis for a lot of modern game theory. So it's like three different outcomes: one where you cooperate with the authorities, one where you turn over your fellow criminal in that case, or whether you suck it up, and it's about cooperation. And when they model out those different outcomes for the prisoners, cooperation, if the game's played again and again, is the best outcome. And that seems to be how a lot of humanity has managed to keep going despite having different interests, because in the end it's better if they get together, a bit like in Eve's book. We need to cooperate with each other in different societies in order to progress, because if we just look after our own interests, ultimately that won't be helpful. So I just wanted to see from a child's point of view, if a child has a little tiny bit of that, as we all have done in our lives, you know, where we argued with a friend or helped a friend, and how that might actually end up affecting our whole lives.
Now, we're running a bit short on time now, so I'm going to put each of you on the spot. One final question for you, and basically, it's you're all, you know, debut novelists, and you've sort of started that sort of step as published authors. Would you have one piece of advice to an aspiring writer? While Eve and Ruby think about it, I'm going to put you on the spot first, Sophie.
I think just get rid of that voice that tells you you're not good enough, and there's already a load of books that are better than yours, and nobody wants to hear from you, because nobody would get anything done if they listened to that voice. We all have it, and you have to bat it away and just keep going with your story, and make sure that you get to the end of it. It's amazing what happens when you get to the end of it, and then you can look back at it. It's a miracle, really, because you can go back and change whatever you like. In my other job, I don't get to do that. Once it's been filmed, or once I've done it to an audience as an actor, that's it. So it's amazing. So get rid of that voice and keep going to the end.
And Eve?
Yeah, I was going to say something similar about don't give up. But the other thing I would say, because I think Sophie covered that much more eloquently than I did, is listen to feedback, and don't take it personally, because when you're starting out, you can really learn a lot. Even if it's a one-liner from an agent who's turning you down, look at what they've said, because every little bit, every nugget is worth something. And Stephen King writes brilliantly about this, that his journey when he first started out, he used to pin all his rejection letters up on this notice board, and they got longer, and he knew he was getting somewhere. So listen to feedback, but stay true to your idea. Don't let them sway you off your original vision.
And Ruby?
I'd say that you really need to love the writing process. I think a lot of people are sort of thinking, oh, I just want to be published, and they're sort of thinking, you know, that's a lovely view of you know, what it's all about, but it's actually really hard work, and you have to really ask yourself, you know, are you enjoying what you're doing? Because it can take years, and you know, it's not guaranteed, you're not necessarily going to get published, so you have to really love the process.
Okay, well, thank you all. So thanks to our three fabulous debut novelists, Ruby Speechley, Eve Smith and Sophie Ward. And normally this would be the point where you rushed off and brought the books and got them all to sign them for you. We can't do that, but if you go over to our website, beaconlit.co.uk, and go to the program participants page, and then to participants, you'll see all their profiles and their photographs and their wonderful books, and you'll see the links to their websites, and you can jolly well go and buy those books, and they're a cracking read. You'll enjoy them all. While you're over at our website, if you'd like to give us a little donation to help us support the Beacon Villages Community Library, which I said perfectly that time, we'd love that as well. So thanks for being with us, and we look forward to seeing you at the next one. Bye for now.